Therefore, all of your metaphysically intelligible utterances are derivative of an impersonal absolute, right?
I'm still having difficulty.
Just answer the question.
If you'll forgive me, I'm still having difficulty with the definitions of impersonal absolute and personal absolute.
A personal absolute would be that which exists, which is non-dependent upon anything else, and upon which everything is derivative, and it possesses the properties and attributes of personhood and consciousness.
Darth just contradicted.
It's actually very simple. By the way, Vivian, even though you and I have butted heads before, I do appreciate right now that you're being civil and conversing with me. There will be some ankle biters who will try to dilute and disrupt the conversation, and I would request that you just simply ignore them or turn their volume down, which I have done, okay? So I'm operating from a personal absolute. You are not. Are your metaphysically intelligible statements the product ultimately of an impersonal absolute?
Sure, why not?
Okay, now, you told everyone in the room that your criterion in order to accept God, the personal absolute, is that you have to have a reason or a rational justification. And in the absence of a rational justification for the personal absolute, you reject it. Now, since you're operating personal absolute, can you tell me what is the impersonal absolute, which is the basis of your ability to make intelligible statements? Tell me what that is. And then when you tell me what that is, I'm going to ask you, what's your rational justification for it? So what's the impersonal absolute that you're operating from?
Okay, so sure. Sense, reason, experience. Yeah. So sense and reason.
I'm going to say that again.
So personal sense and reason, we can make.
No, you didn't understand the question.
You didn't.
Yeah, you didn't. I'm not trying to be mean here. Okay.
Sure.
An absolute. If a reference to an absolute is that it entails dependency, then it's not absolute. So reason, sense perception are not the absolute upon which everything depends. They are dependency situations. They are contingencies. So you're going to have to tell me what the impersonal absolute is, because when I reason with you, I am reasoning from the personal absolute, the God of the Bible, who is the creator and sustainer of all things. And without him, hold on a second. I'm simply telling you what my position is.
Hold on, please. Just hold on.
Now, when I speak to you, when I say the grass is green, implicitly, I can only make that metaphysically intelligible statement in virtue of the personal absolute, the God of the Bible. But since you reject that, you don't have a good reason, and your criterion for belief is that in order to believe in the personal absolute, you require justification. Yep. When you speak intelligibly, and I don't mean semantic comprehension, I mean that when you speak words, they actually mean something with reference to your system. What is the impersonal absolute that you are speaking from in your model of reality?
What is it?
Because you see, in the case that the Christian worldview is true, right, that it's veridical, it is actual, then in that case, any other worldview other than the Christian worldview will be guilty of what is called autonomous reasoning.
Sure.
And autonomous let me finish.
I mean, you have been speaking for a while.
Vivian, let him finish.
I'll be done. Well, the reason why is because you're not understanding some of these concepts. I promise you, I'll give you equal time. Right?
Go ahead.
Now, all I'm simply trying to point at it is, in the case that Christianity is true, you will be left there speechless, not being able to account for your system. So, what is the impersonal absolute that you reason from in order for any statement you make to be metaphysically intelligible?
I don't know, buddy.
Okay, if you don't know,
what would you think it is?
Well, what I think at the moment is not immediately germane to your position, because you're telling me that you need to reason, but your capacity to reason.
You got out there, dude. You're gonna have to like go back and repeat what you just said.
Your capacity to reason and saying that God is unjustified, what is going to have to stem, in order for that to be meaningful, it's going to have to stem from an impersonal absolute. But you don't know what that is?
Sure. I mean, like I said, still having trouble with those terms.
Well, then if you don't know,
can I maybe explain my position in terms that,
yeah. But you see, your explanation of anything, here's the problem. Here's what you're not understanding.
right.
You now have no foundation for the metaphysical intelligibility of any proposition that you make now. It's game over.
None at all. Zero.
So,
If you say to me, listen to me, do you think that you can make the statement the grass is green and that it be a metaphysically intelligible statement while simultaneously saying I don't know if there is at all an absolute?
I mean, I can never say the grass is green with absolute certainty, can I?
I'm not asking you about your psychological competence. I ask you about metaphysical intelligibility of the statement, that a predication or a proposition actually means something with respect to the system that it is derivative of. Now, did you understand what I just said?
Of course it means something.
Okay, no, I know. I said to you that something only means something with respect to the system, and the system is going to have a foundation or an absolute. And without such a foundation, then your predications don't mean anything with respect to your system. Now,
Why?
Why? Because intelligibility of any statement cannot be spoken of
No, you're right.
in a vacuum. Okay? Either when you make a predication, a statement, you will either be making a statement of that which is absolute, or that which is not.
What I was thinking, Stanley. I don't think that's true.
Right.
At all.
Now, when you make statements out of your mouth that are referencing dependency states of affairs, in order for them to actually exist, to be meaningful, what is their origin point? What provides them? What absolute exists that provides for the intelligibility of your dependency statements?
It's cool. I'm lost in the philosophical jargon, buddy.
Well, I'm not actually giving you philosophy. I can dumb it down even further for you. All right.
Yeah.
If I say to you, the grass.
Put in super layman's terms, like you're.
Sure. If I say to you the grass, if I was saying, or a transvestite, if I were to say to you that the grass is green, green has to mean something.
I'm being respectful to you.
Well, you are a transvestite, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
You weren't born a male and now a dress as a woman.
This isn't the conversation,
right. Bro.
Well, that's another subject. We can talk about drag queens.
Oh, get him, Darth. Get him.
Okay, so Vivian, when we say the grass is green, green and grass are classes of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in order to have classes of things, there has to be a uniformity of nature. Without a uniformity of nature, or that nature operates in some law-like ways, then we cannot speak intelligibly of classes or universals. Now,
we can only speak of what we experience, what we understand, right? Like
understanding means knowledge. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at.
There might not be any grass.
So when you make an utterance, when you make a predication about an entity or a state of affairs, those statements will either be referencing that which is absolute or that which depends on the absolute. Would you agree with that?
No.
Okay, can you tell me how you can make a statement of an entity that is neither absolute or not absolute.
Right. Well, I suppose, like I said earlier, all you're uttering, right, is your sensory input. Like you see
not
this
addressing
thing
my question.
as grass. You see that the grass is like the
You're
color
not
you
addressing
identify.
my question. It was
Addressing
a very
the
simple question.
Sir,
Is this the new?
The question
Can
was,
can
how
I
can you? No,
So-
you may
so
not.
you're saying-
I would ask you not to interject right now. This is a one-on-one. There was only 3 people in the room. Now we have a lot of crowd of people. I would rather not that we have ankle biters, so we can see the clarity of Vivian's position. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a one-on-one between
now,
Darth and
Vivian.
trans-based.
Now, Vivian,
Understandable, sir.
you told me that there's a third option when you make a predication about an entity, that you can reference an entity that is neither absolute nor not absolute. Well, what category would it fit in that it is neither absolute or not absolute?
It not being an entity.
A non-entity wouldn't be referencing anything.
It would be referencing like an experience. It would be referencing
No,
sensory.
an experience would be referencing a state of affairs, which would include at least one entity.
Sure,
And the bottom line,
I guess
which
the
you're not.
self-
Yeah, you see, here's the problem.
I guess the self has
Here's the
to be the
problem.
entity.
You're so listen. You're not getting this, and I'm dumbing it down.
you don't get it.
You want
Yeah,
to believe. You want to believe that you can make metaphysically intelligible statements with no God needed. Well, in order for that intelligible statement to be meaningful, you're going to have to tell me what it depends upon. It doesn't matter what the statement is. You could be the
Sure.
grass is green. Okay, you could say a giraffe with a long neck. It doesn't matter what the statement is.
Yeah,
So
I
when
guess
you utter that statement, either that utterance of a state of affairs or an entity will either be absolute within itself. It does not depend upon anything independent of itself for its existence, or it will depend on that which is absolute.
Sure.
Understand
So
that.
it depends.
Now,
It
since you
depends upon-
don't need
Buddy,
the personal absolute,
equal
okay,
time.
Please don't interrupt him, sir. Please do not
What-
interrupt him, sir.
what do your statements of dependency depend upon for their intelligibility? What is the ultimate absolute that provides for it? Well, you already gave us the answer. The answer is you don't know, right?
I'm about to like give you that. It depends on me because I'm the only thing that I can ascertain exists.
Okay. Now,
Not understand.
did you begin to exist?
I couldn't possibly say. Yeah, my
So
consciousness.
So
me,
you don't hold a belief that you began to exist?
I can't ascertain that with
Now, isn't
absolute-
this amazing? This is the intellectual genius, ladies and genitals, of an atheist who says they don't hold a belief as to whether they began to exist or not.
They don't know.
Okay. Well, while you're preaching to the choir. can I
So
just
do you
put
do you
forth
do you
the-
actually believe then you have always existed?
Answer
I'm
him.
speaking. You're talking over me, sir.
See, not only are you confused about the genitals between your leg, you're confused about everything.
Speaking, buddy. I was speaking, and you were speaking over me. So my proposition is right. Much as they are. Sorry, that was
Go
loud.
ahead.
No, I'm listening. Do we have any mods in the room that can take care of this? Because I really want to hear the
You're
Oh,
a mod. Yeah. I don't know. Somebody removed it earlier, but like we agree. and we'll get
Okay.
it to you.
Okay. All right. Fine. So Vivian, what
So
does
my-
the intelligibility of your statements depend upon ultimately?
So my proposition, right, is that we cannot say with absolute certainty that anything exists beyond ourselves, right?
I didn't
They
ask you
can't-
that question.
they can't say-
I
I know
didn't.
you-
You're not addressing my question.
I really don't care. Okay, I was.
That's
in the
like
middle of
saying if I
explaining
asked you, have you visited? If I asked you, have you visited Disney World, and you say, I had a lovely time at the beach, that doesn't answer my question.
Donkey, can I just...
your question, okay? And I have let you speak for fucking ages, okay? So just hear me out for like 2 minutes, if you can manage.
Sure, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So, my whole position, right, is that we cannot know with absolute certainty anything outside of Descartes' proposition, I think, therefore I am. And that proposition shows that, because we think, because we experience things, right, we can say that we exist. Anything outside of that is inferences based on, like, an amount of evidence. So we can say that it is likely, highly likely, that other people exist, right? Because we see them, they do things, they affect us in certain ways. We can feel them when they touch us, right? They exist in some form within the reality that we experience, okay? And that's how we make inferences about, like, the world and what is most reasonable to believe, right? It's the mountain of evidence that I'm not preaching, buddy, but it's the mountain of evidence that.
But you don't know that there are causal relations between events, because you told me the only thing you know is that you exist. Now, in order to speak of evidence, you would have to know something additional to your existence, that there are causal relations between events. So you don't know that there is evidence for things.
No, you don't. You don't know, right? But when you talk about knowing, you're talking about.
You're all over the map here. You're all over the map here. What you're simply doing is, I'm asking you a series of very circumspect questions. I'm asking you a series of circumspect questions based upon your model of reality, and you're giving me community college lectures to questions I didn't ask. Now, I'll ask you again, what ultimately and foundationally in reality secures the metaphysical intelligibility of any proposition that you utter? What is the impersonal absolute that provides for that intelligibility? Because if you tell me, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. If you tell me that you don't know what the impersonal absolute is, then how did you say that the impersonal absolute is more probable than the personal absolute? Did you not say to me earlier that God is less probable than its negation?
Yeah, I said God.
Okay, the negation. Then the negation of God would be that there's an impersonal. Listen to me. Hold on a second. The negation of God as the personal absolute would be that there's an impersonal absolute, right?
Not necessarily, is it?
Now, no. If he wants to deny that the impersonal absolute is the negation, and he wants to offer a third alternative, he will commit philosophical suicide. Now,
I understand.
Is it your position that the impersonal absolute in your system is more probable than the personal absolute, which is God? Because that's what you stated earlier.
There doesn't need to be an absolute. That's the thing, right? Like, you're
not focusing. Maybe it's that hormone therapy that's causing your memory loss.
I'm not on hormone therapy. And to be honest, buddy,
I ask you, is the impersonal absolute more probable than the personal? Okay? You're not. See, each time I ask you a question, you keep on giving me a soliloquy, and you're not addressing the question. Now, is it your position that the impersonal absolute is more probable than the personal absolute?
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. Vivian, if you keep over talking, Darth, I'm just gonna fucking mute you. It's okay. So just stop.
Suki, what the fuck are you doing, dog? We're interrupting Vivian.
Don't interrupt this conversation.
Are you serious,
Luffy? It's going to be gay over. So,
yeah, Vivian, is the impersonal absolute that would govern all of reality more probable than the personal absolute God?
There doesn't need to be a thing that governs all reality.
That's not an answer to my question.
I mean,
yeah,
you're
okay.
looking for a yes,
You
no
do not
answer,
you do
you're
not
like,
you do not
to a
accept
non-binary
you do not accept that there is a personal absolute. So either you will be operating that there is an impersonal absolute, or you will be reasoning that there is no absolute.
Sure. Why does there need to be an absolute? I'm trying to understand.
Which of those two foundations are you reasoning from, Vivian?
I'm not sure there has to be an absolute. Can you tell me why there has to be an absolute?
No, Vivian. Either you are going, I'm speaking from the personal absolute as the foundation to all my propositions, but you don't accept that. So when you speak,
how does God tell you?
Let me finish. Vivian, it's not nice to go to plan B to become argumentative and over talking me, Vivian. Okay. Okay, now you're muted. Now, Vivian, you have basically three options. You can say that your propositions have ultimate intelligibility in virtue of a personal absolute, or an impersonal absolute, or you can deny both and say metaphysical intelligibility for propositions does not depend upon any foundational absolute whatsoever. Which do you choose, Vivian?
Right. I mean, you could have just said that, Darth. Like, taste this pretty much, like, yeah.
Which do you choose, Vivian?
Can I say I don't know?
Then if you don't know, then you have no basis to claim that you possess the capacity to reason and to discuss anything that is probable. Did you not earlier tell me? I will ask you a question. Now, I want you to, do you know how to do the Girl Scout, since you're a tranny? Do you know how to do the Girl Scout salute? Say, on my honor, I will tell the truth. Did you not say that God is less probable than its alternative?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. Then what is the alternative that you are actually reasoning from?
The alternative is personal experience, of course.
No. Your experience wouldn't be able to provide metaphysical intelligibility for itself unless your state of being that you refer to as experience were absolute in and of itself. Is your state of being absolute in and of itself and not dependent?
What am I an uncaused cause?
Is your state of being that you label experience, is your state of being absolute and not dependent upon anything external to yourself? Or is your state of being dependent?
Again, this is unconfirmable, but my state of being is likely to.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to wrap up the conversation here, because maybe all those female hormones have disrupted your brain chemistry because you're incapable of answering even the simplest of questions. So is there anyone else who would like to step in?
Step up to the plate.
Loopy, as a mod, yet again. Because look,
so I want to ask you about this thing that you keep on saying. If I say the universe,
hold on. Just let me just say one thing in wrapping up with Vivian. Vivian has been a clear example of 1 Corinthians chapter 1, where God says he will destroy the wisdom of the wise. The wise are those people who claim autonomous reasoning without God. In 1 Corinthians it says, where is the wise man, where is the scribe, where is the debater of this age? Has not God turned the wisdom of the world into foolishness? And you saw atheistic reasoning from the mouth of Vivian in complete, on full display of foolishness. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so when you say things like